What is up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of Gold Rush, a championship series companion podcast brought to you by the Runout Podcast. I have been planning this for about 2 months now. I am super stoked to be doing a podcast every single day of the championship series. We will be talking about the games that happened and looking forward to the games that will happen. I will have some guests here and there, some friends of the show will join us. It will be a good time. So thank you for tuning in to this very first episode. We are actually recording this before any games happen. This will hopefully be a companion that you can watch or listen to during the day before leading up to the games. Hopefully it'll be a good primer, get you excited for the games. I mentioned earlier that we would be doing this every single day. There might not be one Saturday morning, which is probably slightly okay because that's the day where there's a whole bunch of games. So you might not have had a chance to listen to it anyway, but like I said, I've been planning this podcast for about 2 months, been working on graphics and packages and trying to get people to join us, and had a moment of complete blanking this. My wife works for a newspaper about an hour and a half away, and over the last 2 months she has had to be in the office a lot more than usual because they had one of her coworkers left for another job and she's had to step in to cover it, and so she has been gone a lot more. And I was like, you know what? We don't normally do things for Valentine's Day, but it's coming up. It's a Friday. I know she'll be home. So I got dinner and made a whole date plan and, purchased tickets to a show. And literally the second I opened the confirmation email on my phone and realized that Valentine's Day was Friday right in the middle of this, I was like, oh, crap. But I would like to be able to sit down and watch the games and then still do a podcast to have out for you guys Saturday morning. But if that doesn't happen, I apologize. We will still do a podcast every other day of the championship series, even if Friday does not work out for me and this show. Hopefully it still works out for me. Hopefully my wife still appreciates the Valentine's Day that I have planned, but again, I can't guarantee that there will be an episode recorded Friday night for you guys to listen to and enjoy Saturday morning. But every other day we are here. I will have this up as early in the morning as I can get it to you so that you can enjoy it on your lead into the rest of the day's activities. Today we don't have any games to talk about that happened yesterday, obviously, because the championship series has not technically started yet. But I figured it would be a good time for me to kind of introduce myself for anyone who doesn't know me, talk about the game of sixes and the championship series and kind of my thoughts on it. We talk about the helmets and uniforms and stuff, and then do a little bit of kind of prep leading into the games tonight to see what we're looking forward to tonight with the all Maryland New York combos for tonight's games. First and foremost, again, for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Neil Barrett. I have been a player, coach, stringer, dyer, graphic designer for lacrosse for about 25 years now. Oof, I'm getting old. But I have worked with and around high-level lacrosse for a very long time, and there is no game quite like our game. So I have a lot to say. I think I'm right, but I don't think that I am always right, contrary to what some people might believe about me. I will argue my side, but I don't necessarily think that that means that I'm always right, especially as we'll talk about today about helmets and uniforms and designing. I have my thoughts and opinions, but I am the first to acknowledge that, art is subjective and my opinion isn't necessarily correct, though I am going to think it is, obviously. As for Sixes and the championship series, I have watched pretty much at least a couple of games from every kind of major Sixes competition that we have had access to. The World Games in 2022 obviously was a big one. All of the championship series, I have watched, again, at least a couple of games from every kind of USA Fall Classic that they've done. I believe they just did the third one in Indianapolis this year. The previous two were at the US Lacrosse headquarters. So I am about as familiar with the game as you can get. I think the PLL version of the game is far and away, hands down, the best version of Sixes. I think the international game suffers from a few additional things, but the one thing for me, I understand why Sixes was created. I understand that they wanted to get it into the Olympics, and with that becomes certain criteria in terms of, it has to be played on the same field for both men and women. I understand that they couldn't do box because box involves building rinks and getting a lot of equipment, more equipment than even regular field lacrosse equipment, especially when you get into like outfitting goalies and, you got to get arm pads and all kinds of rib pads and stuff again, and then build ring walls and stuff. So I understand why they didn't want to go down that road. I also understand that even regular field lacrosse presented some issues in terms of numbers and size of squads and stuff. Even at an international competition where rosters are fairly limited, you have to have 23 guys that can, or 26 or whatever it is for international competition, that can compete at a very high level in order to be remotely competitive. And so they were looking for something where, a country like a Japan or an England doesn't have to have 20 guys at a high level. They could have 7 guys at a high level, fill out the roster with some other pretty good players, and be fairly competitive, as we have seen over the last couple of years, specifically with Japan really, really kind of rounding the corner and in many ways becoming that fourth best team in the world. Australia probably still has a claim on that, but Japan has really come on strong in the last couple of years. So I understand kind of the goals and why they created Sixes. But for me, the biggest thing missing from Sixes is that it's such a cold version of the game. There is no kind of emotion or emotion basically in the game. It's been described, and it's probably a little heavy-handed, but I also kind of understand where people are coming from. It has been described as watching the West Jenny drill that we all have done in some form during practice. I don't know if you're younger, maybe not. If you're anywhere near my age, you have definitely done the West Jenny drill. I know when I was still actively coaching, which I haven't done for the last 4-ish years, but when I was actively coaching, everybody knew the West Jenny drill. We all did it. Again, I don't know that they're still doing it, but I imagine everybody knows what the West Jenny drill is, and that it's been described as watching the West Jenny drill, and I get that, and I think a big part of that is the emotion. And so one of the big things that I've been advocating for since the beginning, since the very first time I saw Sixes being played, was to modify the rule about once a goal is scored, rather than the goalie just immediately picking up the ball and passing it and play restarting that way, was to have the ball taken out of the back of the net, brought out to the end line and inbounded, similar to basketball. I know that's a little funky for probably some of the lacrosse purists, but I think it solves several of the major flaws in sixes. Number one, I think as a spectator, it is incredibly hard to know whether or not a goal has been scored. So a guy takes a shot, regardless, barring that he misses wildly, regardless, the goalie is going to pick up the ball and pass it out, and play is going to go the other direction. So if it's a goal, if it's a save, if it, hits a pipe and drops, like, nobody knows if you're just watching the game. I don't know how refs aren't confused half the time. So I know it has been a really big struggle at times to know whether or not what you just saw was a goal until the scoreboard changes or doesn't change, which can sometimes take some time. Another thing that I think it solves is that emotion element of the game. You don't have to take a full, 30, 45 second break in that you get in like field lacrosse and even box lacrosse, where a goal goes in and everything kind of stops for a while they go reset play, and you have this like 30, 45 second break. It can be a lot like basketball, where just that time to inbound the ball gives you a moment to flex, for lack of a better term. Not that you have to literally flex, but that emotion, especially in tight games and in big important moments, that emotion is so important to why we love sports in general. But especially in lacrosse, you need time to process what you're seeing, as well as to display emotion, to experience the emotion of the moment. So I think that is a huge element that is missed. It really is. The sixes has been sped up for the sake of being sped up, and it drives me a little crazy to know that, like, there is no, you hit a 2-pointer that puts your team up with a minute left, and you get to do no kind of emotion, no celebration of that moment, because you immediately have to turn back around and run down and play defense. And then the final thing for me is that it makes the viewing experience. I know if you're at the St. James this week or wherever else they're hosting sixes, and you're physically present there, I know it's kind of a different thing, and people have said that they really enjoy the pace of it. But when you're watching it, when we're talking about broadcasting this sport, both at the championship series, at the Olympics, at even things like the USA Fall Classic or whatever that is, where it's Team USA playing each other, or, a handful of lacrosse countries playing each other. When you're talking about watching this game on television, you need that tiny break, because you can't process what has happened. The announcers can't break down what has happened. You can't show a replay or any of these things. When the second a goal is scored, it's immediately going back down to the other end of the field. I have seen plenty of times where a replay was shown and we have missed a goal on the other end because of how fast the play is going, and they're still talking about this play, and now there's a goal here, and you just get so far behind. Like I said, the game has been sped up for the sake of making it as fast as possible. We are doing speed for the sake of speed, and I think, and a lot of people seem to agree, that it is hampering the game. And like I said, Sixes is here, whether we like it or not. Sixes is here, and I want to see it become the best version of Sixes that it can be. If we're going to present it to the world, if this is going to be the thing that makes the Olympics, and that's a whole nother conversation about whether or not we even want lacrosse in the Olympics. That's a whole different thing. But Sixes is here. It's going to be in the Olympics. And if we're going to do that, I want it to be the best thing that it can be for consumption by the public audience. And I don't know that it's there. Again, the international game suffers from some other issues in terms of, I think penalties are a little bit harsh in Sixes. I think there's a good argument for a 2-point arc in the international game. I've heard counter arguments that were also persuasive, so I'm a little torn on a 2-point arc. But suffice it to say, there are things in the international game that I think could be additionally tweaked, but even in the PLL version, which I think is currently the best version of Sixes, even in it, there are some things that could be tweaked like that. So that's kind of where I'm at overall with Sixes. I feel like that is a good kind of thing to discuss before we get into this week-long discussion of the game and what its pluses and minuses are. You guys know now where I stand on the game as a whole. But for this championship series, the 2025 championship series, one of the big new additions is obviously the WLL being there and playing games as well. I should be better at the women's game than I am. I am not very good at following things that aren't the men's college game and the PLL, partially because I have a wife and a family, and I can't just sit down and watch games as often as I would like to. Trust me, I really would, but I just can't commit that level of time, partially because I just didn't grow up around it, and partially just my own, let's be real here, just my own biases and stuff that prevents me from watching things even that I would like to. Just, I'm going to prioritize, watching a Duke lacrosse game over just about anything. So I am not as up on women's lacrosse as I should be, as I would like to be. I know what everybody knows: Charlotte North. I know Alex Ostholman. I know a lot of the names. I know, Izzy Skane, Lizzie Colson. Like, I know the names. I don't know much about them beyond that. I watched even a decent amount. I think I watched maybe 3 of the U.S. Women's box games, and I still couldn't learn players' names. I still couldn't learn who was who. Again, I knew number 8 was Charlotte North, and that was about it on that team. So I am really looking forward to watching these WLL games, learning these players, learning skill sets. I honestly, I'm going to make some picks later in this episode when it comes down to the WLL. I don't even have a knowledge base to make an intelligent prediction like I would normally like to do. I'm literally just swinging. I have no real idea about what the on-field product is going to look like. So I couldn't tell you anything. And again, all that to say, I am really genuinely excited about learning the WLL players, some of the teams, the makeup, the chemistry. And I am really hoping that come this summer, we will get some more WLL experience in some form. I have mentioned on the run out several times that I am expecting there to be some WLL presence during the PLL season. I'm not entirely sure what that looks like. My guess would be that at the very least, if you go to a game in Boston, if you go to a game in Maryland, if you go to a game in California, if you go to a game in New York, that team will be present there, at least in the fan zone, signing autographs, all that kind of stuff. If not, playing some kind of an exhibition game as well, especially with AU closing its doors and the players, one, having the time and availability, but also missing out on that paycheck, on that game time. I would hope to see something. What form that takes, I don't know. I don't know if they'd play sixes. If they do play some kind of an exhibition game, I don't know if they'd play sixes, or if I would hope, though I don't know that they will, but I would like to see them play whatever the PLL or the WLL game is going to be. I would like to see them playing that. My hope is that the WLL looks to women's NCAA lacrosse what the PLL is to NCAA men's lacrosse, where I can go to a PLL game or watch a PLL game, and then I can watch an NCAA game, and they're different, but they overlap enough that you're not completely lost. There's going to be some rule changes. The field dimensions are slightly different. Obviously, there's a 2-point arc, but by and large, I can understand when I'm watching one or the other. And I'm hoping that the WLL is like that it takes the women's game, it puts it on a PLL field, so it'll be a little bit smaller. Maybe there's a couple less people just because of field dimensions and the fact that there are 12, players in NCAA women's lacrosse, but that it can be kind of modified and tweaked slightly, but where I can still see the women's game. That's what I'm hoping that we get. And again, on the run out, I have discussed several times that I fully expect there to be a WLL All-Star game during the PLL All-Star break weekend games. So hopefully we at least get that, and then maybe get WLL presence at least the weekends for their local markets. If not, even some exhibition games throughout the season. And then, next year or the year after, whenever it is that they do a full WLL rollout, would be the thing. So again, all that kind of rambling a little bit, but all that to say, the WLL is a welcome addition, and I am definitely really excited about it coming down in the future. I guess the next thing to get into is helmets and uniforms. We'll talk about them. They're kind of the one piece that we really have of the puzzle already before today's games kick off the start of the championship series. So I am going to, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, I'm going to share my screen and you'll be able to see the things that I'm talking about as we talk about them. If you are listening to this podcast, I will try to describe it in as great a detail as I can. Obviously, you won't be able to see it. So just know that if you watch, you'll be able to see things like this in the future. So since the WLL helmets dropped first, I will take a look at them first. We'll go kind of chronologically here. For me, the New York Charging helmet here is one of the best professional lacrosse helmets I've ever seen. I originally said that it was the best of at least the PLL era. I'd have to go through every single MLL helmet. I don't have the time for that. I backed off on that slightly, and I'll just say that it is a top 3 PLL era helmet, not because I can specifically think of something that's better. I'm just leaving room for there to be a better helmet. Though I cannot think of one off the top of my head. Again, I'm just trying to leave space for there to be one. Everything about that is perfect. I love the lightning bolt charge thing around the mascot behind the back of it. It works perfectly. The bolt as the mohawk, the use of the colors is perfect. That is also the first time I've ever seen the platinum finish on a helmet. I don't know when Cascade, I actually went and looked it up because I was like, wait, what is this finish? For those of you who may be listening and can't see it, the charge helmet is kind of a silver, shiny silver, but it's not chrome. It has like a kind of a brushed thing. It's not quite matte. Like if you look at the matte navy helmets that the guard and the Atlas are wearing, it's not the same kind of matte texture. It's kind of a brushed. It has like a sheen to it, so it's not completely flat and matte, but it is also not shiny in the way that a chrome helmet is. I don't know when this came out. For all I know, Charging isn't even the first, kind of big team to wear it. Maybe I've even seen it. I just don't remember it, but that was the first time I've seen it. I think that works so well, works with the colors. Again, all of the colors that they use. I would have this. I couldn't think of a thing to change even if I wanted to. It is for me perfect execution of a helmet. And like I said, it is at least a top 3 PLL era helmet, if not top 3 all time, if not best all time. So clear favorite across all of the helmets that we are going to go through here. For me personally, number 2 is probably the guard helmet here. The one, I guess, kind of caveat here. Well, let's just talk about the helmet first. Red, white, and blue, matte blue shell, red jaw, white face mask. The jaw piece, sorry, before we get into the jaw piece, the one kind of thing to say here is that red, white, and blue is a combo that has been around for a very, very long time, especially in pro lacrosse with the cannons. It is very hard to come up with a combination that we haven't seen or to use those colors in a way that we haven't seen. So I will say I am mildly bored with it. However, it's such a good, classic, clean look. It's also really hard to screw up. So they did great with it. I love that rider decal. The logo itself is great. It looks really good in decal form, kind of like the Charging. It really occupies that space really, really well. So no real complaints overall. The one kind of thing that I have to say is that the black jaw piece, the hard plastic kind of outer reinforcement being black is a big problem for me. I come from that kind of era of navy and black do not go together. So that is really tough for me to see. And in my mind, this is the perfect case for using jaw skins. I have heard from other people that jaw skins are prohibitive for teams. When you're talking about like the PLL, they are more expensive than they are worth to add, especially when you think about the fact that like in the PLL, you create these jaw skins for people wearing Cascades, but anyone wearing an STX helmet or a Warrior helmet, doesn't get one. And so they're missing a level of accoutrement to their helmet. It was really, really noticeable in like the first season with the chrome when they had the pink to blue on their, I guess it was the old S helmet. I think the first year was S helmets. And so they had this kind of colorful display on their, black, otherwise black helmet. And when you saw like Justin Gutterding was wearing a Rival back then, and he just didn't have that colorful detail, and it was very noticeable. So there's the fact that they're kind of expensive and not worth it monetarily, combined with the fact that they don't match across helmets. I still wish that they would. Just as a design nerd, I think it's an element I'd rather see you figure out how to make it work with the other ones than to remove them from the Cascade helmets. But these are one-offs or two-offs, because I think each team has two goalies. Two-offs where all of the players in the league are wearing the Cascade helmet. So this is like the perfect place for it. And if they were red or white even, it'd be great. The other additional thing that you could have done on this helmet, you couldn't do it with the Atlas helmet, and I will explain why, but you could have also made that a white jaw piece on this helmet. Then you don't have to worry about a jaw skin. It works perfectly. It ties into your colors. So why they went with black here, I don't know. And I'm not really a big fan. That being said, again, the red, white, and blue is just such a classic and easy colorway that it's probably my number 2. For me, the Palms is number 3, not because of any dislike. I just think it's slightly more simple, but to its benefit, I think you could have easily kind of overdone it with these colors, the green, the yellow, the pink, a hint of orange. I think going with the white shell, the white chin, the white jaw piece, I think all were really good calls. And then letting the few pops of color, the yellow chin, the green face mask, and then your decals just works. And I am on record as saying that the Palms logo is my least favorite, and I stand by that, though partially that is due to being a designer and just knowing that gradients are a big no-no. They are extremely difficult to reproduce. So they are extremely, extremely difficult to reproduce, and they have a tendency to get muddy even in places where you can reproduce them. And that does happen here with the Palms a little bit. I can show you right here. If you look where the word mark Palms is, for those of you that can watch, apologies to anyone listening. This is super fun content for you, I understand. You can see at the top where it's green, and then it gets kind of this muddy, weird, awkward color before it hits the pink. And so gradients are really tough, even where you can technically reproduce them. They get really kind of awkward oftentimes. And then there's plenty of cases where you can't reproduce them. If you were trying to embroider that logo onto something, you'd have to divide it into color blocks. You couldn't do a straight gradient. So my training as a designer has taught me that, gradients in logos are a big no-no. So that was kind of the first thing that I bumped up against. And then the second thing was that the green and pink and yellow colors didn't quite work for me. I thought instead of the green, you could have done a blue, or you could have made the yellow and a little bit more orangey, and made it work better for me personally. But both of those things kind of happened. So one, they were obviously able to print the gradients to some varying degrees of success. But also, I think if you look, I think you can see it maybe a little bit better on the jersey, but the green looks a tad lighter, and the yellow being used is a bit more orangey, and so the gradient colors do kind of work a little bit better for me than they did on the original kind of release materials. So for all of that to say, I have this one as third. If you are someone who believes the Palm helmet looks better than the Guard helmet, I'm not going to fight you on it too much. I think it's a really good looking helmet. Again, I think in my brain, it's just that the red, white, and blue is just kind of classic, and it's really hard to screw up, and it works really well. I do really, really like the ghosted logos in the Mohawk with the gradient on the Palms helmet. I have not seen any images of what the Mohawk looks like on the Guard helmet. It's possible that they also have a really cool helmet, but until I see it, I can't really comment. So I am going to rank them that way. Again, if you feel differently, that is fine. But the pretty clear fourth place for me is the Maryland Charm. To me, this is really incongruent. It feels like it was several different random ideas that they just kind of stuck together, rather than having like this congruent like thought of like, this is what a helmet should be. Especially if you look, they're literally next to each other in this picture. The charging helmet and the Charm helmet, everything about the charging looks like it was one thought out, like solid process, and everything about the Charm helmet feels different for me. It's a chrome helmet. It's a yellow chin strap. It's just this random kind of amalgamation of things, and I don't really understand how they got here. It feels to me like the helmet that your local cool U12 team would wear, where some overworked U12 coach thought it would be cool and the 12-year-olds agreed. So we got this red chrome helmet, and it just, I don't know, it doesn't feel well thought out and well planned to me. I also am not sure. To me, the Charm logo that they're using on the side of that helmet feels like it fits the space the least. Both the Palms and the Charm really kind of used their full logo, whereas the Charging and the Guard used the mascot element of their logo. And I think there was maybe a slightly better way to do it. I know the Redwoods kind of did the tree helmet thing with what we lovingly refer to as the watermelon helmet. But I think maybe the Palms could have done crossing palm trees on the side or something, rather than trying to do the full logo. But again, all that to say that, again, I think these four helmets just across the board are very good. I'm not the Charm being pretty decidedly in last place is still better than some of the other helmets that we've had. Depending on your opinion, you may think that watermelon helmet from the Water Dogs or from the Redwoods was one of the worst helmets of all time. So I'm not here to poo-poo this too much. That's just how I would rank them. I just really am not a fan of that Charm helmet, but the rest are really, really good. So that brings us to the men's helmets. I have to start first and foremost with the Archer's helmet. When I first saw this picture, I thought that face mask was white, and I thought it was a good looking helmet, but there's a reason why we often hold our opinions on designs in uniforms and helmets and stuff until we see them on the field. And this helmet right here is exactly the reason why. Seeing it on the field, seeing, the lighting is kind of dark, so the orange doesn't stand out as well as it does on the field. Realizing that was a chromium mask. This could be entirely based in the thought of, I grew up in an era, I was playing lacrosse in an era where the height of lacrosse fashion was wearing a C Pro or a CPX with a titanium face mask, so much so that chromium masks came out of people wanting the look of titanium but not wanting to pay for titanium. And I was one of those people. I bought a black, my college at the time was black and gold. My entire team, kind of spearheaded by me, bought black shells with gold visor and gold chin and chromium mask. They're not really chrome. They don't shine and sparkle like chrome. So a chromium mask helmet, because it was just the peak of lacrosse fashion, as I said. And something about seeing these on the field was just lights out. I couldn't believe it. They went from being like, oh, that's a nice helmet, to like, holy crap, this is one of my favorite helmets that we have done. The number 2 for me is going to be the Boston Cannons here. When looking at this, I realized technically, I think this is a better helmet than the Archer's helmet in terms of like technical design. They did what I like to see when you have a chrome helmet. First of all, the chrome navy looks great. And then they did what I like to see when you have a chrome helmet, which is you let the chrome kind of be the pop, the thing that kind of draws people's attention. And then you just do kind of solid, relatively plain quote unquote decals. I love the Mohawk decals. I think they are probably the best Mohawk decals we have seen in the PLL. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that's better. The Archer's arrows, which they have on this helmet, they've worn for several years, I would have up there as well. I like the PLL tends to do very, very plain Mohawk decals that are just kind of a solid color. Or remember last year the Redwoods had the solid. Were they green, I think, with then just like a white tree kind of like dotting them. It was really weird, and I hated it. I like when you do something original, and these again are some of my favorite Mohawks. Unfortunately, they haven't really put out any good pictures of it. The most I've seen it is from practice footage, but they are very good. They do have this Boston decal on the back. Again, sorry for those who can't see. It says Boston, and then there's kind of a skyline on the back of the helmet. Fits that shape back there. It has that bend very, very well. The one thing I might say is it's a tad small. It could be a little bit bigger, but I know that they don't like to cover up the warning thing here with decals. That's like a big thing when you are liable for what might happen to someone in the helmet, is to not cover that up. If you were part of lacrosse during the full wrap era, when people would do full wraps of helmets, they would often, if you were using a reputable source, they would often reprint this on your wrap so that when you covered it, it was still there, so that they could avoid any kind of legal issues. So I'm sure that's a big part of why that Boston is so small. That being said, I do wish it was a little bit bigger. But that's probably the only real complaint. I love the gray chin, the gray jaw piece. It's going to tie in with their shorts very, very well. The white chin strap, I think, was perfect. It's subtle. It's understated. This, again, this is a, technically speaking, as design goes, this is a better designed helmet than the Archer's helmet. But the Archer's helmet elicits that emotional response from me and probably other people. I won't comment on them, but it has that element of like, oh, like I said, when I saw it on the field, I was like, whoa, holy crap, that thing is awesome. There's something about it that has kind of this like nostalgic feel to it while also being just really awesome. So while this is a technically designed better helmet, the Archer's one is my favorite because of whatever it does that makes me feel something. The opposite end of this technical design versus emotional response spectrum is the Whipsnake's helmet. It doesn't feel well designed, nor does it elicit a response from me other than meh. And this was one of my biggest issues with the rebrand from the red and teal Whipsnakes that we knew for the first 5 years of the league to the University of Maryland Whipsnakes that we have now, is that I think the biggest issue with this is technically it's fine. You got the word mark on the side. You got a half decent, interesting pattern to the decals, but you are not going to come up with anything that we haven't already seen. And even when you do, it's not going to feel like something we haven't already seen, because this helmet, for example, the second I saw it, I thought, we've seen this helmet from Maryland. And I can see it in my head. It's a red S, so this was 5 or 6 years ago. It has the little white Maryland M on the side of it, and then it had the Maryland flag decals for the Mohawk. And I went and looked it up, and I couldn't find it. If someone out there feels like they have seen this from Maryland before as well and can find pictures of it, let me know. I couldn't find it. So at least until someone proves otherwise, this is not a helmet that exists, and yet it feels like it. It looks just like every Maryland helmet that we have seen over the last 5 or 6 years. I can't say anything about it is special or stand out. We are going to forget this helmet almost as soon as they take it off at the end of the championship series next week. There's just nothing about this helmet that feels good. And I would venture to guess that even Maryland Terrapin fans feel that way about this helmet. Some of them may like it because they are Maryland fans, but I think even they would agree that there's just nothing special about this helmet in any way. And now you not only have the Whipsnakes doing this kind of thing, but you also have Maryland doing it as well, which means, you're just not going to get away from this. And in looking at that and in looking for that Maryland helmet, what came across my feed was an image, the release image of Maryland, of the Whipsnakes' last teal helmet. And it's just incredible, the things their last helmet was somewhat similar to this. It said Whips on the side. The big thing was that it was teal, and I think it had a snakeskin pattern instead of the Maryland flag theme, because they obviously weren't the Maryland Whipsnakes at that point. They were just the Whipsnakes. And it was amazing how basically the same exact helmet, but with its own personality, felt different, because it was the same thing. It was a teal green with a white face mask, and I believe it was might have been a white jaw, but either way, it was a largely the same helmet, and it felt completely different. So it's funny how that works. Again, just like with the charm, I'd have this as pretty solidly the last place helmet for me, and somewhere in the middle of that kind of technical and eliciting response, and this, which elicits nothing from me, would be the Atlas helmet. This one's tough because I do really like the matte navy. I think it was a good addition. I think it's going to look very good with their lighter blue. Sorry, I don't know what color to call their lighter blue. On the helmet, obviously that's more of kind of a Carolina blue. On the jerseys, it's more of like a Panthers blue, what's known as process blue, or sometimes it even kind of looks like a Detroit Lions kind of Honolulu blue. I don't know what to call that color, but anyway, they're lighter blue jerseys. I think this helmet will really pop off of. The only thing about it for me is just there's not much to it. This is basically their white helmet from the regular season, just in navy. In fact, the decals didn't even change. Those are the exact same decals from their white helmet. I feel like, and we're going to go, this is kind of across the board on the PLL side. I feel like the championship series is supposed to be that time for you to do something different and exciting and new. The Archers wearing an orange chrome helmet, I don't think works in the regular season. The Archers have been kind of I hesitate to call them traditional, but a traditionally kind of based, rooted in a traditional look, at least. And I don't know that they could get away with a chrome orange helmet during the regular season in the way that like Chaos can and the Water Dogs can. So this is kind of an opportunity for them to do something different and exciting. And kind of across the board this year, I feel like the PLL really lacked originality, and this is one of them. And then the other thing that I bump against again is the black jaw piece on the navy helmet. I understand why you didn't go with so the three jaw piece colors that you can get from Cascade are black, white, and gray. And I understand why you wouldn't go with white or gray, because your helmet decal here is this horn, like that's kind of the visual element. And by throwing a white, another kind of horn shaped element in there in white, it's just going to completely draw your eye and distract from everything. So I understand not going with one of those two colors. It's one of those instances though where I'm like, I wish Cascade offered navy, and or that the jaw skin was just a much more feasible option. I think this is a helmet that will look really good in the STX Aero and Warrior Burn X. I haven't seen any of those. I don't know if they have any Warrior Air STX helmet wearers anyway. I know I think they have some STX guys, but like Miles, I think, is an STX guy, but he doesn't wear an STX helmet. So I haven't seen one, but I haven't really been looking, but I think it will look better in one of those two helmets than this. It's a solid design. It's not really an exciting design in any way. And at least on the Cascade, the black jaw piece really kind of takes away from it for me. So moving on to the uniforms, again, we will go with the WLL to start with. Overall, I think these are it's not even overall, like these are better than the PLL jerseys for sure, hands down. For me, I think the Palms is my favorite. Again, we're going to have a favorite and kind of a technical one that's maybe the best. The Palms, I think, is my favorite jersey. It just works for me. Again, I love the ghosted palms on the sleeves. The gradient works. Again, it is a little muddy behind the word mark there, which I don't love, but from maybe a distance, at least, it looks really good. The colors are bright and vibrant, and something about it, just like I said, it's that emotional response. Like I see it and I'm like, oh, I like that. I like that. I tend to be a sucker for white uniforms. I think colors pop off of them very well. The contrast, generally speaking, works well for me. I keep buying white jerseys though, and I get them dirty and it's terrible. So hopefully I can find some better color examples to buy in the future. But anyway, number 2 for me is Boston. I feel like maybe technically it's slightly better. Y'all could argue that if you want. The logo looks good. The colors look good. I like the little tiny white pinstripe at the sleeves there. I like the pinstripes on it. My issue is, one, the Atlas have already been doing the faded pinstripe thing. So you took it from the Atlas. And 2, probably my bigger complaint is that pinstripes aren't associated with Boston sports teams. Pinstripes are associated with New York baseball. The Mets and the Yankees both wear them. Even like NYCFC has done pinstripes. They are kind of known for their pinstripes. So pinstripes are associated with New York teams, not with Boston teams. So I don't really understand the choice either, from the fact that it's an Atlas thing and this team is not in any way related to the Atlas. It would make more sense to give it to the Charging in that case. And nor does it make sense from a Boston sporting perspective. So I think it looks good. Again, it's technically a very nice design. I just don't think it makes much sense for them. I wouldn't necessarily put it on any of the WLL teams, but if you're going to put it with a WLL team, put it with the Charging and link your 2 New York teams that wear the same color palette, are clearly inspired by each other, together. And I could even see where you take the pinstripe and you give it little lightning bolt kind of cuts here and there, to kind of take the element that the Atlas have, that you're clearly being influenced by, but also at the same time making it your own. To me, that would just make so much more sense. I don't know why they didn't do it, but all that to say that, again, it's a good looking jersey. I like it a lot. I just think it could be tweaked to make a little bit more sense. 3rd for me is going to be the New York Charging. I am really generally a big fan of this. I love their logo. So to have it on the front of this, I don't know. It's doing most of the heavy lifting for me in my mind. The colors are great. I love the lightning bolt pattern on the side. This is just a very good, clean uniform. I wouldn't say there's anything super special about it. It's just kind of solid all the way around. So pretty solidly in 3rd. And again, coming in 4th, sorry, Charm. The Maryland Charm. I wouldn't have an argument if you said this was better than the Charging uniform. I can't really disagree or argue. For me, I think what it comes down to is that the Maryland Charm logo is, how do I want to say this? Not my favorite. I think it's very close. I don't think that you need to make any kind of big drastic changes to it. I think there's some sizing things you could tweak. I would keep all of what they have. I would just move some things and shift it and make it make more sense in my mind. One of the biggest issues for me is that Maryland is about twice as large as Charm. You have this big giant thing that says Maryland, and then this tiny little squished script that's very hard to read that says Charm. That's one of my bigger issues with it. So again, all of the elements can stay. I just would play with hierarchy and spacing. I think that the snake and the anchor could be a little bit bigger, making some different spacing choices for the rope elements. But again, everything is there. It just needs to be changed, tweaked here and there. And I think that is one of my big issues with this. Again, it's not that anything about the jersey is wrong. It's just that logo is such a big element of it. And compared to especially the charging and the guard logos, it just doesn't do it for me. The other thing that I didn't actually notice until recently, when I was preparing for this, is I'm going to call it a snakeskin pattern that's sublimated in, that's reminiscent of the old whip snakes pattern. The whip snakes had 3 bellies, which is again a whole nother conversation. And this one looks less like the underbelly of a snake and more like a pattern based on snakeskin. Let's see if I can pull this up real quick. I probably should have done this already. Excuse me. Come on. Super fun, I know, for you guys at home listening in your car. So you can kind of see it here in this image. It is here. You know what? I'll make this bigger for you guys that are watching. You can kind of see it here a little bit. You can see it's not directly a snake skin pattern. It's more of something kind of inspired by snake skin. See through there? So I love ghosting. I really like this kind of idea of this sublimated kind of pattern being there. But for some reason, this pattern doesn't quite work for me. I can't quite figure it out. And like I said, for the longest time, I thought the jersey was just kind of wrinkly. Several of the pictures of the girls wearing uniforms, the uniforms were a little wrinkly here or there. And I thought that every time I saw this jersey, I thought those were just wrinkles. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it needs to be maybe slightly darker or if it just needs to be a better pattern. I don't really know, because I don't have the jersey like in my hands right here in front of me. But suffice it to say, this was something I bumped against. And while I do like kind of sublimated patterns and textures and stuff, it wasn't enough to save this one. I have this one pretty soundly in last place. It's funny too, because when they did the roster announcements, I specifically tweeted that the player jersey that I believe it was Lizzie Colson was wearing was phenomenal, and I absolutely loved it. And this may be one of those things that I want to wait and see on the field, and maybe that'll pull me around a little bit, because I do know the name and number font on the back of her player tee was phenomenal. It looked so good, and I was very tempted to buy Maryland Charm player tee based off of that, even though I'm not even remotely a Maryland fan. So moving on, finally, we will hit the PLL championship jerseys. I will take the worst WLL jersey over the best PLL jersey. That's not actually true, because the best PLL jersey in this bunch I do actually really like a lot, but the other 3 can all be thrown in the trash. We will start where we finished with Maryland. The Whip Snakes are wearing the exact same uniform that they wore during the summer last year. The one difference is that said Maryland and had their number on the front, and this has the big giant Maryland M with the snake on it. And the only other difference is the collar. The striping is the same. It has the same Maryland flag pattern in the sleeves. It's white. Everything about it is the same, just a different logo on the front, basically. And then the shorts, I believe, are the same shorts. They did switch colors. They are, during the regular season, they wore a white jersey with white shorts, and here they are wearing red shorts. I am discounting them pretty heavily for lack of originality. The one thing I will say is that I do think the red helmet, white jersey, red shorts combo is going to be one of the best looks during the championship series, at least on the PLL side. I am a really big fan. I am really looking forward to that. But again, lack of originality is going to be a theme throughout the rest of these jerseys. So there's not even really a point in ranking them. 3 of these can basically be the same rank. They're all the same thing. We will start with the Atlas here. Same thing as Maryland. They are wearing the same uniform that they wore during the summer last year. The difference is they, instead of their main logo on the front like they had during the summer last year, they have a secondary logo, the interlocking NY. I'm not a huge fan of that logo. I love the idea. I think they were really, really close. I think they missed on a few things. Again, a few tweaks, and I think they would have had a really cool logo. But either way, I don't want it here where you've just slapped it on essentially the same jersey. Again, the collar's different. It's blue collar, as opposed to they had like a kind of a stripy open. It wasn't an open collar, but it came around. Anyway, the thing about this that I'm not a big fan of is that it's that lighter blue in both the shorts and the jersey with a navy helmet. I think visually it's going to be very, very top heavy. It's going to feel like a lot of these players could just fall over at any minute. So I'm not a big fan of that. I think if they had navy shorts, this would be a very, very good, clean look, but they don't. So I guess if I had to rank them, I'd probably put these just behind Maryland because, again, I think that red, white, red combo is going to look good, whereas this is going to look a little funky. So, and then you have the Boston Cannons. They are wearing the exact same jersey they wore during last year's championship series. The only difference is that said Boston and had their number on it, and this has the Bomb B on it. I hate this logo. The other logos that I've said that I've had problems with, it's usually kind of minor tweaks here. A lot of the ideas I like. This one I can't stand. Put this one up there with the Guards B with the tri-corner hat sitting on the corner of it. Hate them. Hate both of them. They both could burn. I find no redeeming qualities in either of them. And I apologize. I know somebody worked hard. I just don't like them. If you do, cool, great. They're just not my thing. But again, with this being the same jersey that they wore last year, it's just, for me, the extreme lack of originality. And again, if I had to rank this, I'd probably put it above Atlas, but I think below Maryland. I actually like the Maryland uniforms. I'm just bummed at the lack of originality. I liked them a lot when I saw them last summer. So this looked better with the Boston and the numbers on the front, even independent of my thoughts on this logo specifically. I think it just looked better with Boston and the number on the front. I do like the gray shorts. They're going to be tricolor with that chrome navy helmet, the red jersey, and the gray shorts. This is one that you could say is probably trying to push it a little bit in terms of they went tricolor. They've got gray shorts, a chrome navy helmet. They have definitely pushed their brand identity a little bit. But in a way that top to bottom just kind of doesn't work for me. Again, the helmet's great. The shorts are solid. The jersey is one of my least favorites. And so from just kind of top to bottom across the board, I'm not really a big fan. The one that does kind of work for me here is the Archers Navy jersey. It is one of the few kind of original thoughts that was put out during this championship series for the PLL. This is the first time the Archers have been in a Navy uniform since they moved to since the PLL transitioned from Adidas to Champion. They did have a Navy mesh jersey, and I believe one of their indigenous jerseys, I can't remember if it was this year or last year, was Navy, but this is the first time that they've had a full-time wear Navy jersey since the switch to Adidas. I think they look really good in Navy. I think that orange pops really well against the Navy. So this image looks a little bit more royal for those of you watching who can see it, but I think it's more of an effect kind of across the board. I think, they do too much of these reveal photos where they've changed colors and put filters on it, or used colored lighting, or, in this image, he's standing about 2 feet from an orange background and it is casting orange color onto everything. So colors can be tweaked and changed and stuff. I love having, cool reveal photos, but I wish that they often would provide us with good, clean images of the details and elements. Those of us that are into gear and jerseys and, uniforms across the board nerd out about that stuff. So it's really frustrating when you get these dark or, moody lighting. I think I talked about it with the Archers jersey helmet. I mean, that the colors were kind of muted because they had used this dramatic lighting that had affected the way that light was reflecting off that orange chrome helmet. So it's really, really funky to see that, and you kind of have to read through the lines and try to decipher things. At one point, I thought a lot of the helmets being produced had jaw skins because they had used color lighting and it was reflecting off some of the shinier elements of the jaw pieces. And I really thought that they had used jaw skins, and I was really excited until I realized later, once they got on the field and you could see them in live action, that they didn't. And that was kind of a bummer. So again, all that to say, I am a big fan of the Navy uniforms for the Archers. This is my favorite use of the mountain motif for striping that they have done. They've tried it a few different ways. This is my favorite way that they've done it. I still would probably rather see the feather motif from the original Adidas jerseys. That's still one of my favorite elements that any PLL jersey has ever had. But if you're going to try and tie it into Utah and you're going to use this mountain motif more, I think this is the best that they have done with it. So I'm a big fan of these jerseys. Again, it's the first kind of original thought that's been put into one. The shorts are pretty good. They're not wholly dissimilar from what they did last year, but they have been tweaked and turned on their head a little bit. They altogether, I'm not as big of a fan of the tricolor motif as other people are. It's not my favorite. I think that the orange, navy, and white is going to be decent. I would probably put this slightly ahead of the Cannon's tricolor motif in terms of the whole thing altogether, but for the uniforms themselves, these are by far my favorite, and this is the one that I would take over. I'd at least take it over the Charm and the WLL. I'd get tougher after that. I might. Yeah, I don't even know. I don't know. I'd have to really sit with that and think about it for a minute. I want to give you guys an answer, so I keep trying to think about it, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Other than the charm, I'm not sure what WLL jersey I would take this over. But anyway, all that to say, by far my favorite PLL jersey, and up there in contention with some of the WLL jerseys. So the last thing to do is to talk about the games themselves. Obviously, the first thing to talk about is the injuries. We had 3 kind of major injuries announced last week. The first being to Will Manny. If you listen to the run out this week, I talked about it on there. I personally am really bummed to see it. I was hoping that he could put on a show and showcase that he deserves to be here and playing in the PLL. I can't believe that a guy led a team in this league in points and now can't get on the field. It's so bizarre to me, especially when he was signed by a team that was begging for a left-sided midfielder. They couldn't figure it out all season, and he was just sitting at home waiting for them to bring him to practice. So it's a big bummer to me. I was really looking forward to seeing him. I was really looking forward to him and Marcus Holman being together again, reuniting the bunk bed boys from Utah. But that is not going to happen, which is a big bummer. Speaking of Utah, then the next injury that was announced was Grant Ament being out for the championship series. I think that is going to be a big hit for Utah. I think a lot of people had them as one of, if not the favorite to win the championship series, and he was a big part of why. The team itself is still very strong, but losing Grant Ament is a big problem. Similarly, and announced at the same time, Connor Schellenberger is going to be out for the Atlas. Another one that I would say was probably being looked at as a potential kind of golden stick winner, and really pushing that team towards a championship. If they reach it, it was going to be kind of on the back of Connor Schellenberger. So it is really tough to see him go down and not be able to play. I was really hoping that we were going to get to see what he looks like without Jeff Teat. Connor Schellenberger at Virginia was incredible. Then he comes in and he plays with arguably the best player in the world right now. And it was the Jeff Teat show that, kind of featured Connor Schellenberger. This was going to be kind of his time to see what he could do as the leader of an offense in the PLL. So it is kind of a bummer to see him out. And all 3 of those are going to be big misses. You got to say Manny being out for the Cannons is less of a big deal, solely because, he didn't play for them last year and they won the whole thing. So, his absence will be felt less than probably Connor Schellenberger and Grant Ament, but all 3 still big misses. So with that out of the way, let's get into some predictions now that we have that to kind of guide some thoughts. For the Golden Stick, I'm going to start with the WLL. Like I said, I just don't know the women's game. I could try to make some, hipster pick based on, what I'm hearing from people that I know the game, but I don't. That would be disingenuous. So I'm going to pick Charlotte North because she's a person that I know that is going to score a lot of goals in the championship series, put up a lot of points, and will probably be in the running at the very least. beyond her, I couldn't even begin to tell you who could win it. So we will move on to the PLL, I guess. The one that I think is kind of like my dark horse to win it is Miles Jones. I think this is going to be his first time playing in the championship series, which seems kind of baffling considering that he was on the Redwoods and the Atlas, and they have both played in this. But he was on the Redwoods the year the Atlas went, and then he moved to the Atlas the year the Redwoods went. So, he's like the opposite. Romar played on both teams. Miles played on neither. So I think that he is going to be very, very good. I think this game is built for someone like him. Conditioning wise is going to be his only issue, but as long as he's on the field, he can pull up, he can drive to the net. It's all shorties. Nobody can stop him. I think this game is tailor suited for Miles Jones. So he's the guy I want to pick, but I don't know. I just it feels too hipster to actually pick him. So then I was looking at other people. I think TJ Malone should probably be in the conversation towards the end of the championship series. For him, it's probably gonna depend on how long the Whipsnakes play. On paper, at least, the Whipsnakes are arguably the worst team here. So how well the Whipsnakes play and how long they play could be a big factor for him. But given what he did in the regular season, it'd be a crime not to at least mention him amongst the favorites for the Golden Stick. But I think you got to look at Marcus Holman and Asher Nolting. If you put a gun to my head and forced me to pick, I'm going to pick Marcus Holman because I think he has some elements to his game that Asher doesn't. And so he's slightly more flexible in terms of how he's going to get points. That being said, I don't expect Asher to have any shortage of points. I am going to put Marcus as my favorite, though both him and Asher were second and third. Last year's Golden Stick winner was Kieran McCardle. Second, third, and fourth were all Cannons players. Asher and Marcus tied at 31, so they were tied for second. And then Matt Campbell had, I believe it was 28, and he was fourth. So you got to think the Cannons are going to be coming in to this as the favorites to probably win it all again, and Marcus and or Asher will be the favorites probably for the Golden Stick. So I'm not making any bold prediction here by saying that it's going to be Marcus Holman, but I do think that given his play style, given how good this Cannons roster is, and given the fact that they are, the defending championship series champions, I think it is entirely likely that he wins the Golden Stick. One thing I'd like to mention, because I didn't mention any Archers player, I would have probably had Mac O'Keefe and or Grant Ament towards the top of this list as well, but Grant Ament's injury severely hampered that. I think they went from a team that's looking to win the championship series to a team that's going to struggle. At least if someone doesn't step up, I guess I should say. They still have a very good roster, but they need someone to fill that Grant Ament hole, and they don't have it. The two other guys that could potentially fill it, again, at least on paper, are both playing in the NLL and will not be at the championship series, and Tom Schreiber and Connor Fields. So I don't know who fills that kind of creator role for them. And at least up until now, from Penn State to the NLL and the PLL, Mac O'Keefe has not been that guy. I don't want to say he can't be that guy. I don't want to put any limitations on him, but it doesn't seem like that is going to be the case, again, based on the history of his career. So I just don't see who on the Archers team is going to put up big numbers like that. In fact, my guess would be that the strength of this Archers team is going to be built on balance and how kind of spread out they can make their scoring, as opposed to having a leader or two kind of pushing the game. So it's kind of my thoughts on Golden Stick picks for the overall league championship. I originally had the Archers. They were my favorite. I really liked the makeup of the team, but like I said, with Ament going down, I just don't know who fills that role for them. And so I have to go with the Cannons repeating as well. I think the Atlas are probably, depending on how obviously the bracket shakes out, that would be my pick for the championship game, is Cannons Atlas. I really like this Atlas team, and I think that even with Shelley out, they have some guys that can step into a creator role. And again, I am very high on Miles Jones for this championship series. So I think it comes down to Atlas Cannons, and the Cannons will win the game and the championship pretty easily, giving them the championship and the Golden Stick, which I believe would be the first time that we have had a Golden Stick winner on the championship team. Someone, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know Romar won it in year one, and Chrome won the championship, and then last year was Kieran McCardle, but the Cannons won. So yeah, that would be the first time that we have had a Golden Stick winner be from the team that won the championship. For the WLL, once again, I am woefully ill prepared for conversations about this game. It will be something that hopefully by the time we get to a championship, I'll have something intelligent to say about them. For sheer shits and giggles, I will pick the Boston Guard. We will get a Boston championship champions, I guess I should say. Boston Cannons and Boston Guard being the champions of the 2025 championship series, but that is almost exclusively based on the fact that they are 50 minutes down the road, and I know Charlotte North. So I don't even want to be a Boston sports fan, but just by the sheer fact of there being four teams, not one of them being in North Carolina or associated with me in any real way, we're going to go proximity and the most famous player to me of the game being Charlotte North, and we will just ride with the Boston Guard until further notice. So those are my two picks. Tonight, we have an all Maryland versus New York affair, with the Maryland Charm taking on the New York Charging in the WLL in the first game, and the second game, the PLL game, being the Maryland Whipsnakes versus the New York Atlas. We will have breakdowns of the games and look forward to tomorrow's games on tomorrow's episode of Gold Rush. Thank you for tuning in. I am, again, so excited about doing this podcast for the next 7 or 8 days, and hope that you are too. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you tomorrow.